I usually try to pick songs that are in the same key or in keys that are relative to one another. So for example, if I'm playing in the key of D, I'll try to keep songs in D, but if I need to go to G or I need to go to A, I'm only moving by one sharp, and there are still several chords that I can use to transition. Like for example, if I'm in D, I can go to B minor, and B minor is also in the key of G or in the key of A, so I can use those kind of jump chords to get myself into and out of the next song. But usually I just really find musicians are more at ease. I'm more at ease whenever I'm not so worried about switching from, say, the key of B to the key of C, where you go from all these sharps to all of a sudden nothing. I think it sounds more pleasing to the ear. It's not as much of an interjection in that worship service, and I feel that it keeps people engaged more in that moment. So that's something I like to do, is I like to try to keep songs in the same key or in a relative key, so that things are more simple for the musicians, and it keeps that atmosphere of worship going for the congregation as well. Some other tips I find, engaging people. I know it's not all about us, and sometimes you can have worship leaders who are talking too much, but you can also have worship leaders who are not talking enough. And I find that some direction at the right moment, whether it be an exhortation right at the beginning of your first song before you go into a first chorus, or maybe it's sharing a scripture or a prayer that's on your heart after a song before leading into the next song. I find these moments really help us lead the way and point the direction towards where we're heading. One of my favorite worship leaders is Matt Redman, and he has this book called The Unquenchable Worshipper. And something he says that's kind of cheesy, but it's so true. He says, we're not there as worship leaders, but we're there as the lead worshipers. And so I find that the best way to engage people and point the direction to God is not just be there pulling people, by the hair, or taking them by the hand and pulling them against their will, but really pointing the way and setting the temperature for the room. And that might be by being abandoned with your praise and lifting your hands in worship at certain moments, or singing your heart out, but really just being that lead worshiper and that person who's setting the tone and setting the temperature for the room. And I often find that people are way more ready to jump in on that if they sense that the worship leader's heart is really into it, and that they're really going for it. They're going to be more inclined to jump on board with you than if we just kind of put up this wall between us and them and we're kind of doing our own thing. So just really be conscious about what you're doing as a worship leader. Are you really leading the way with your worship and showing people how to worship, or are you kind of dragging them along with you? That's kind of one of the things I find, that helps you from having the stares or having the people who are really engaged in worship. And one last thing is also your content. I'm someone who loves new songs. I love to try new things and really, get new, the newest songs, the newest, the latest, the best. But at the same time, we have to be sensitive to where our congregation is. And I've been places where sometimes there's 3 or 4 new songs in a set, or new songs right after one another. So it's good to just kind of be conscious of that and think about where the people are at, and it's probably their first time to learn the song. So help them through that song. Or maybe it's not a good Sunday to lead that particular song. Maybe it's not a good time to introduce it. Or if you do want to introduce it, then maybe spend a little bit more time repeating verses, repeating choruses. And then if you're going to do a new song, I try to balance it with doing an older song that's very well known and very well loved by the congregation. And I think if you do that, it'll really be an awesome moment where we can all be there together in unity, and people don't feel like they don't know what's going on, but they're really led and taken on this journey with you of learning these new songs, as well as connecting with old past favorites.
Okay, so now we're looking at transitions. In other words, how can we achieve a smooth flow from one song to another? Well, we have 4 elements we can look at for the song. First of all is the lyrics. In other words, we need to make sure that there's a good connection between the songs. When we lead the congregation in worship, we're taking them on a journey into God's presence, and it helps them if that can follow some sort of logical order. Often we start our worship with songs of revelation, songs which speak about how great God is or who God is, the character of God, and then we enter into a time of response, how we respond on the basis of that revelation. So a good lyrical flow, but from one song to another, really helps get a great transition. Then looking at the musical elements, first of all we'll look at the rhythm and the tempo and groove. If we can match these up between two songs, then we have a surefire way of connecting the songs together strongly from a musical basis. Then they don't even have to be in the same key. The melodic instruments can cut, just leaving the drums playing, and then come back in 4 bars later with the new song. So that's the second one, is the rhythm, groove or tempo. The third thing we can look at is the melody. If the note which we end on in a song, that the lead singer ends on, if that can connect with a note in the second song, the start note, then that will also give a great transition. And it doesn't even have to be, for example, the lead singer. It can be just a single note on the keyboard connecting one song to another. And that can also work with songs in different keys. So if you're starting in the key of C, and you'd have the chord of C, E and G, the notes of C, E and G, you could use the G note of the C chord to connect with a song which is starting in the key of G. So that's looking at how you can use a melodic note to connect two songs. That's the third one. And finally, perhaps a little bit more common, is we try to get songs in the same key. In other words, we look at the harmonic or the chord structures. So if you can match songs up on that basis, it's great. Now if you take all those 4 elements together, if you can work all 4 elements in, then you have a very seamless transition. But just picking up on 1 or 2 of those, and I think you're going to get a great flow between your songs. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Zach Lowry. I want to talk to you just a little bit about song transitions. I really love seamless, and I love songs that go from one to the next without really having to do much to stop the song or to change the key or to completely interrupt the process. Dead space sometimes feels awkward to some people. Abrupt key changes sometimes feel awkward to people, and I want to show you just a demonstration of a way to transition between songs from a chorus to a chorus without having to stop the flow, the rhythm, the movement, the singing, so to speak. It's kind of like having a conversation, and you don't have to disengage from that conversation. You just continue on the conversation, and you feel like you're really connecting. Sometimes in worship, this is where we are. As a corporate, as a congregation, we engage our hearts in worship. And so I'm going to show you between the 2 songs, One Thing Remains and Majesty, okay? Your love never fails and never gives up. It never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up. Never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up. It never runs out on me. Your love. And we'll go to Majesty right here. Singing Majesty, Majesty. Your grace has found me just as I am, empty-handed but alive in you. So you get the idea. It works in between choruses, and sometimes you can even go from a bridge to a chorus and create a seamless flow from one song to the next without having to have a stop or a pause. Works with same tempo songs, preferably. You can do it and be a bit creative if you want to speed the tempo up. I recommend good band for that, good drummer who can set the good tempo. All right, well, I look forward to seeing you next time. Be blessed.